Okay, I'm going to call this special meeting of council to order, and we will be following by our committee of the whole. So after this meeting, before adjournment, then we will entertain questions from the audience, people sitting. So I will call the meeting to order. There's no additions on this, but there's only two. So I will ask for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Curry, all those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Then we'll move on to, I guess we're not adopting the previous one, we don't have one. We'll move on to reports for administration, and the first one is the Edson Multi-Recreation or Archives and Professional Services RFP, and I believe, Jim, you're speaking to that?
I am, thank you. So we've reached a milestone in Edson. We're at a point where we can actually decide, or we have decided, and we're submitting our decision for your recommendation on who's going to do the first three stages of this RFP. So the joint project to build a multi-use recreational facility in Edson has reached another milestone. The award for the RFP tender for architectural and professional services. The RFP listed three stages. Stage 1, pre-design and site selection. Stage 2, geotechnical study. And Stage 3, conceptual design. We have decided, it was a joint submission from the county administration and town administration, that the winning tender or the winning RFP should go to Stantec Architecture Limited, and the price came in at $67,800, and that's without the geotechnical study. The range that we believe the geotech to likely come in as an additional cost is somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000. So the winning submission is well under our budget of $300,000. This firm has a lot of experience in this business in the province and in Western Canada, and they received top marks for their submission.
Just if I may add to that, Mr. Chair, the county did ratify this recommendation at their meeting earlier today for consideration of council.
Okay. Questions, Councillor Sorensen and then Councillor Meyer.
You would need to have a motion
on
the table there before you.
Sorry, I was looking for a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay, Councillor Wilkinson. Okay, now we'll make the motions on the floor. Now we can speak. So it would be Councillor Sorensen next.
Through the chair, so just to be clear, the $300,000 still has to pay for the conceptual design as well? No.
No, this is inclusive of a conceptual design.
So it's stage 1 and 3, but not 2?
That's correct. Yeah, we anticipate somewhere between $12,500 to $20,000 for the geotechnical work. It was quite common in the submissions that they suggested that the geotech happen parallel but not directly with the architectural work. Stantec has indicated that they do have a sister firm or an internal Stantec geotech arm who would be able to provide that service.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Byers.
Through the chair to administration, what kind of timeline are we looking at for the stages 1, 2, and 3?
We're looking at, once this is ratified, engaging almost immediately, and the start time would be from November and hopefully finished by the end of January.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Curry.
Just through the chair, just to clarify what you had just said there. So this, there won't be a separate RFP for the geotechnical that will be included, but it'll just be a different budget. But the same firm will be taking care of all of that.
Yes, that
Okay.
correct. That is our intention.
Okay, and Councillor Bevins.
Got to look, do you?
Well, I don't want to call people by their first name.
Through the chair, the Jim here. Was Stantec going to sell their construction arm of the business and that? Is that going to affect them in any way?
I don't know if that's even a relevant question.
Yeah,
Well,
no, Through the chair, I think I understand your question, Councillor Bevan. No, we don't anticipate this affecting them. They would still, they're primarily an engineering firm.
Yeah.
And I would anticipate that they would have great interest in the future stages of the project, and this would not preclude them from bidding. They would still have to be the most attractive bid as well when we get to those future stages.
Yeah, I just wondered if they're selling it, they're gonna restructure, if it's gonna affect them down the road or us down the road.
Not that we know of.
Do we know? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, my only comment, I'm pleased, like when we did a $300,000 budget and we come in at 67,000 plus the 20,000 is for doing that. So, I mean, we gotta be more than happy, because I have to agree, Stantec is a good firm. They've been around for many, many years. So then, and I believe the time frame was mentioned, so sometime.
Targeting January 31st.
Okay. Okay, so that is good. So then, if no more questions, then I will call the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Jim. Okay, the next item up is item C2. I'm going to declare a possible conflict, so I'm going to leave the room. I will turn it over to Councillor Curry, because she's next in line. So we'll put her on the hot seat, and the sun is now gone. You're not blinded here, so you can move here or stay there, wherever you choose.
Yes, okay, I'm gonna stay here.
Okay?
So item C2, council, the motion put forward that is recommended, or if somebody wanted to make a different motion, was that council approve conditional funding in the amount of $65,000 to supplement the shortfall in the EDRS operating budget for 2018. Such conditions will include the following: one-time provisions of shortfall funding outside an operating funding agreement, and that the Edson District Regional Recycling Society agrees to negotiate and establish an operations funding agreement with the town of Edson effective April 1st, 2019. So that's a motion on the table. Councillor Sorensen?
I would like to make an alternate motion with the exact same wording, but in part 2, remove the word funding, so it just says operations agreement. If you'd like me to reread it, I can.
I think, does everybody understand what he's saying, or do you want it? Okay. Okay.
Everyone's comfortable with the motion then?
Yeah. So you've just taken out the operation, so it'll just read: the Edson District Recycling Society agrees to negotiate and establish a funding agreement with the town of Edson. An operations agreement with the town of Edson effective April 1st.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And just a minute to speak on it.
Yep.
Over the last 9 years, we've seen the society's grants from the town almost double. It's grown by 92%, or $235,000. Even more troublesome is that this trend doesn't seem to be improving. In 2017, the society was $73,000, or 8% over budget. This year, they need $65,000 in emergency funding, and next year, they're asking for a grant increase of $135,000. This is simply unsustainable, and I believe a new agreement is needed to ensure this essential service is insured to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak to it?
Through the chair, to Councillor Sorensen. Do you not think this year is an exceptional year with China shutting their markets? Like, I'm sure every recycling depot is sitting with materials they can't get rid of. And that doesn't give us an excuse to just dump them in the compost, I mean, not the compost, but the garbage heap, really. So I think we have to try to carry it until that market sorts itself out.
Councillor Bayer.
Through the chair, I think that I have to agree with Councillor Sorensen here that it is a little bit concerning for sure. And if it was only the markets that was the reason they were over budget, then that is one thing. But there's 6 other items they've listed that they're over budget for, and it's not very clear how it's determined that it's $48,000 over budget, or just how that number became about. It's just listed as a number, but not with any background to support that information. So I am a little bit concerned with, I guess, just a little bit of lack of clarifying information on that. I don't know if administration has anything to add to that.
Bruce?
Madam Chairman, good evening, Council. I have some information. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the overages in expenditures that are on the sales side are related to plastics and mixed waste. And that has gone from some of them being a saleable commodity to being ones that we have to pay to get sent out of town. So without the exact split, but those are the two commodities that have caused the most problem.
Councillor Sorensen?
Just through the chair, in reply to Councillor Wilkinson, the changes in China's acceptance of recycling materials has certainly affected this year's budget, but they were $73,000 over budget last year, and they've been growing almost doubled in 9 years. So we can't blame all of this on China's changes in policy. Thank you.
Through the
Councillor
chair,
Edson?
to Councillor Sorensen, what has their volume increased in the last 9 years? How much has that increased of what they've handled?
Is that a question to admin?
It was a question to Councillor Sorensen.
Are you allowed to do this?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair, I don't have that number, and they certainly have increased a variety of materials selection. So, but it's our job to make sure that the budget concerns are always taken care of, right? So the choices of which materials are recycled has budgetary implications for the town of Edson and to the taxpayers, and so we need to have that clear discussion.
Through the
Councillor
chair, to
Wilkinson?
Councillor Sorensen, I think we can only have a clear discussion if we have the data. Like if our volume is that much bigger, of course it costs more. It just makes sense, and everything is packaged more and more and more, and we're ending up recycling it, which is great, rather than throwing it out.
Councillor Fire?
Through the chair to administration. So on the report, the attachment there, it shows that sales barely went up in 2017 when they got the contract from Hinton, but expenses skyrocketed by $175,000 in that year. How is that contract justified on the books to being profitable to Edson taxpayers, or could Edson taxpayers be paying for that? And like how does that work with the Edson and district? Or is Hinton included in our the funding for this depot or not?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, certainly we believe that the society is operating under the parameters that Hinton is a profitable exercise for the society, or otherwise I don't think they would be pursuing it. But we don't have full confidence that we've seen the financial information to support that. Not to say that it isn't profitable, just that we're unclear as to whether or not that is actually a benefit to the taxpayers of Edson ultimately.
And another question through the chair to administration. So in the notes it says all the figures are budget figures, not actuals, and that they're not supplied to the town. So why wouldn't the Edson and District Recycling Society not supply that information to the town?
Yeah, thank you. I think simply they were not requested. This was going back, and Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, based on the budget requests that the society made, and so they were simply supplying their budget requests for the coming year, and the town in the past did not request or ask for actual numbers. Yeah, so.
Any other ones? Okay, I'll comment now then. Bear with me as I just got thrown into this chair. Question to administration. Can you provide some clarity for me on this? It's saying that the overture for the municipal grant budget is $21,000. We're asking for $65,000 with the drop in the revenue by 48. So if the overture for the municipal government, where I'm having confusion on this is that revenue, does that go into their other budget that's also, do they count that revenue in the other budget that is not just the municipal budget? Am I making sense?
I think I understand the question. Yeah.
The revenues that are captured within that recycling facility, as I understand it, the revenues and the expenditures for the commodities collected are charged to the town, as well as we reap the benefits of the sales. So the sales value would go towards the costs related to the operation of the facility.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I would maybe have Sarah, do you want to comment on the consolidated budget that they presented?
Sure. So for 2018, the town received that obviously back in 17, and it was a consolidated budget for the entire recycling society. Throughout the year, we've been talking with the recycling society to sort of better understand the different areas that they have within their operations. So it's been split into 4 different areas: a municipal portion, Hinton, grants and contracts. All of the sales do go under the municipal portion. I'm just looking at the spreadsheet that I created. So all the sales do go under the municipal part. They don't get split amongst any of those. So Hinton's sales should be in with that as well.
Okay.
And if I add to that, I think one of the concerns we have in terms of where the expense lies is in the consolidated budget that was provided. It was anticipated that the municipal function of the recycling society would cost approximately $220,000, but the estimated actuals for 2018 is that it will actually only cost $190,000, which means the municipal function performed better than anticipated. And so administration at this point is unclear as to where those over expenditures or lack of revenue has happened.
Okay.
Sarah, did you want to add to that?
If I may, so through the chair. If we look at 18 as consolidated rather than the split, because it could be a little difficult to do that accurately. With the figures I'm using the figures that were given to the, I think a meeting at the Recycling Society at the beginning of September. So these are the ones that I'm looking at here. The revenue budget for 2018 was $857,000, and the actual projected was $892,000. So the revenues were actually projected to be higher than budgeted. The expenses were budgeted at $857,000 and projected at that stage to be $998,000. So looking at this consolidated part of it, it's actually the expense side that has gone over, because the revenues are actually come in higher than they had actually budgeted for. Okay. From other areas, not necessarily the sales, but from other areas.
Okay. Sir? Councillor Wilkinson?
To me, there's confusion if the volume has gone up or not, and I do see our chairs here and our operator. Would this be an appropriate time to get things straightened out before we're voting on money? Because, Bruce, I know you're representing them, but you've just recently come to town too, as far as these historical numbers are concerned.
Yeah, if I may, procedurally, that's not typical that we would do that. I think we're comfortable to answer in a very general sense, and if council prefers to receive additional information prior to making this decision, we'd be happy to do that. The reason that this item has appeared on this special agenda is it's our understanding that the Recycling Society is facing some cash pressures, and so we wanted to get this resolved as quickly as possible so that we could help to alleviate some of those pressures. But I think in a very general sense, have we seen some volume increases over that period of time? I think yes. I do think that the budget increases have significantly outpaced the volume increases, but we'd be happy to compile that information and provide it to council.
Through the chair, I'd like us to vote on this tonight if we could, and then I would like a presentation so those questions can be answered. A presentation to council in the very near future.
Okay.
Thank you.
I still have a few more questions. Has administration been informed of any cost-saving measures that the society is going to be doing, knowing that this is over the budget, and that the budget that was presented, not having actuals and such, what other plans do they have to ensure that they're not going to be requesting more funds?
Sure. So, Bruce, you can add to this if I miss anything. So, I think in a general sense, when this was first brought to our attention, it was anticipated that it was going to be more than $100,000 that they were going to be requesting. And so I think the society has obviously worked very hard to minimize those costs and expenses to the best of their ability. But Bruce, I don't know if you want to add anything specific to that.
Thank you. I could. In meeting with the society, they have indicated that they've, as far as credit card use goes and shipping and those kinds of things, they have cut back on anything that isn't absolutely necessary for the operation. And I appreciate the comment that I'm new. And for my part, what I see is that, you know, sort of outside looking in, and now knowing what I know is the operation has grown. That society has grown. There's many initiatives that have been taken on, and the kind of scope that we're looking for a core service is intermixed with these others. And I think that's why the recommendation is being made that we separate the two and also look at the use of the facility in the operation agreement. Historically, there hasn't been a clear agreement on what is to be spent, how it's to be reported, how we're to be tracking it, what kind of expectations there are for cost savings measures and stuff. So, but to answer the direct question, they have cut back, and they told us that they are looking to minimize their expenditures for the remainder of the year.
Okay, thank you. And then my final comment, just based on something Councillor Sorensen had said, this increase that is coming for next year, looking at the increase and how much it has increased in the last 9 years, the increase that is being requested coming in the future is a 1.3% tax increase would be what would be necessary for that to happen. So definitely moving forward, like, I think it's very important that we have some kind of operating funding agreement, because that's a substantial increase and an understanding. So just greater information needed to understand why these numbers have changed so drastically over the years. And if that is that it's been volume and such, that's great, but that information I think needs to be provided to us, because I think for our taxpayers, they need to have a better understanding of what's going on and where these funds are being spent. So I think just better clarity on that, I know I need in the future. Councillor Beyer?
Through the chair, just to further Councillor Curry's comment. So we are heading right into our budget workshop here shortly, in a couple weeks. Why was the date April 1st, 2019 chosen? Why not something sooner that would kind of perhaps be a little bit easier with our budgets?
Yeah, sure, thank you. I'll answer it. Bruce, you can correct me. Honestly, fairly arbitrary. What we wanted to make sure is that if we're going to take a really good hard look at how it's functioning, we wanted to make sure we gave ourselves enough space and time to give that process justice and do our due diligence and create a dynamic that's going to place both the society and the municipality in a better state moving forward. And so we felt that that was just probably about the minimum time we would need to review and discuss with the society, and then come up with a new dynamic.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Dr. Zell.
Just have to grab it, Councillor Schnarr. So, Councillor Curry, if there are questions specific to the Recycling Society, it would probably be most appropriate for you to at least begin answering them, or ask someone else if you would like support, because Councillor Chenard wasn't part of that conversation.
Sounds good.
Okay.
If there's questions.
Okay. Okay, so we'll carry on to item D, would be questions from media or public regarding today's special meeting. So if you have any questions from the audience, I will take them at this time. And when you do have a question, could you please identify yourself and direct them to me?
Louise Connolly, and I'm chair of the Recycling Society, and I appreciate the discussion that was happening, and thank you for covering the shortfall for this year. We as a society would like to meet with council to talk about the issues and also about where your priorities are. The reality is the only funding, we don't even have a funding agreement. What we have in place is a dissolution agreement. Is the only thing that we can find, and from the sounds of it, the town didn't even have it available, that we had to provide it to them. So we need to sit down and we need to talk about where the town's priorities, where we go with recycling. Because, as I learned a long time ago on council, and I sat in that position, Recycling is not cheap. It is very expensive, and it's even more expensive if we hide it by putting it into the ground. So I look forward to meeting with you and talking about this further.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the floor?
If I can add something, and we really look forward.
Please say
to
your names.
Oh, my name
because
is
we're on
Ann
live. Thank you.
Goriot. I am the manager of the Edson and District Recycling Society, EDUS. Look forward to meeting one-on-one, because I think there was a lot of numbers thrown around here and a little bit of confusion on certain items which I could easily answer. In fact, your dollar per ton has stabilized and been about the same since day one. So just to keep that in perspective, and that's how, as a manager, I look at it, is dollars per ton diverted. So, yes, and look forward, and very good questions, Councillor Beyer and Councillor Curry. I look forward to being able to answer those and explain those.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Media? No, you're good. Okay, so then if there's no more questions, concerns, then we'll move. I'll ask for the adjournment motion. Councillor Beyer. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our committee of the whole. So if you people wish to stay, by all means. But if you need to sneak out and you have to go eat supper, then by all means go. If not, then I'm going to call the committee of the whole meeting to order, and I will look for an adoption of the agenda. Who's quicker? Councillor Sorensen. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, and then we'll look for adoption of the previous meetings. And do you see any additions or anything, problems? Okay, then Councillor Bevins, you were fast at the draw, so all those in favor? Okay, we will move on to item F3, draft financial report policy. Nope, did you miss anything? Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so presented today is a draft of a financial reporting policy. And the purpose of this policy is to just outline how administration will report financial matters to Town Council in order to ensure appropriate financial oversight. It also would be the rescinding of a very old policy, what's called the payment of accounts policy, which has actually been, a lot of our newer policies have actually taken over a lot of the things that were in that. So any questions or comments from?
Councillor Byers.
Through the chair to Ms. Bittner. So on the old policy, number 5, it says all interfunctional transfers. Where does that end up after this is done? I didn't see it in the new one, but is it somewhere else in another policy? Or is it not
Through the
relevant?
chair to Councillor Beyer. It's really taken up with our budgeting for reporting now.
Okay.
You'll see within that new budget we have capital transfers in and out, reserve transfers, so it's sort of been taken over by another function.
Okay.
This was quite an older policy, and so a lot of the processes have changed and procedures have changed since then.
If I may, I would add to that
Go
as
ahead.
well, that in a very general sense, the Municipal Government Act mandates that administration can only operate within the budget, and so if there's alterations or additional budget required, administration must seek council's approval. And this is also part of what the auditor audits every year when they come, to ensure that expenditures are in line with those legislated pieces.
Councillor Sorensen.
Section 1.2.b, I believe the $1 million threshold is a little too high. I would personally would like updates on capital projects that are smaller than that, so maybe the $250,000 or $500,000 range. For instance, repairs to a pump house wouldn't be included in that capital project update, because it would be around the $200,000 to $300,000 mark. So that's one comment.
If I may,
Anyone-
Sue,
yes,
you'll notice that
respond
the
to
numbers
this?
that are highlighted there specifically were just kind of placeholders, and we appreciate the feedback on those numbers in particular, because we were just kind of placing them in there, and we'll certainly take and appreciate any feedback there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bevins, and then I believe Curry.
To the chair, Councilor Sorensen asked the question, was answered, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, Councillor Curry, I believe you had a question, and then we'll move over to Byer.
I was actually going to make the same comment that Councilor Soren said. That number seemed a little high. And I would almost go to say that the legal invoices seemed a little high too, at 10,000 maybe. But I have seen some of the legal invoices, so I know that they're expensive. But yeah, those seemed a little high to me.
Would someone like to respond to that?
Yeah, certainly, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the legal invoices is that administration's position is simply that I think it's more, the intent is to report to council anything of an unusual nature. We could budget $100,000 for a legal process, and then it's just a regular expenditure. What we want to get away from is reporting just regular processes, and so in terms of that, I think the 10,000 number was just selected as that certainly covers what we would consider a general legal expense, and so just with that in mind, I would just say that's our intent, is just to get away from having to report on what is really a basic purchasing process.
Okay, if I'm following right, I believe you haven't spoken yet, right? So I'm going to go Wilkinson, Byer, and then Sorensen.
When we've been approving our legal fees, 10,000 still seems high to me. I would think we're in trouble if we're at 10 and that we should be notified. I'd like to see it maybe more the 5,000 to 7,000.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Councillor Byer, and then Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration. So on number 2 on the new draft, so does that mean that if the RFP is over budget by 50,000, then it'll be brought back to council right away for further rationale and consideration, or is that only at the quarterly report? I'm kind of confused by that.
Yeah, thank you. So this is intended that an RFP where the budget is $50,000 and over would be reported in this manner. RFPs that were under $50,000 would not be reported in this manner.
Okay.
Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair, section 3 on legal invoices. I was kind of surprised that this one, the majority of this policy is about reporting to council after the fact. And then this one talks about coming to council for a resolution for invoices over a certain number. So I'm wondering why that seems, that's not a reporting thing, so I'm wondering if it would fit better in some other policy or some other bylaw.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Administration agrees that part of that process that we were engaged in before was a approval process, which takes place in another. The intent of having this in there is the report of imminent legal risk or significant legal risk is what we're really talking about reporting here. Yeah, so that's the intent of including it in this policy, is that council would be aware of any potential action or legal liability that appears imminent.
Okay, go
Through
ahead,
the
Councillor
chair again,
Sorensen.
then I would just, can we take out the requirement for separate resolution of council then? Because if that seems very clear. If it's $10,000 and it's imminent legal action, then yes, report it. But I don't know, it just muddles the fact that now you need separate.
Perhaps we can, if I may, we can
Yeah,
adjust
go
the language there to suggest that it will be reported to council rather than sought for approval. It would certainly be my preference in a purchasing sense that any legal processes would follow all our other purchasing policies as we do with anything. So
Yeah,
really,
I'm not-
once a budget's been passed, administration follows the purchasing policy, and as long as we follow those guidelines, then we wouldn't report the actual purchasing of the services. But I do think it is important that there's a mechanism in place for council to be aware of significant potential legal issues. But that's not at the invoicing stage. It's when administration becomes aware of them.
Okay, Councillor Byers.
Through the chair to administration. So I really like all the quarterly reports that are listed in there. I certainly appreciate that. I do have a question though, is, and I'm using the wastewater treatment plant as an example. If that was over budget and maybe the engineer found out, 4 days after we just did our last quarterly report or something, how does that play with this? Would we have to wait till the next quarter, or is there a way that we can put, if it's over by a certain percentage or dollar value, that it would then be reported in addition to those quarterly reports?
Thank you. I think our intention on that would be that the next quarterly report would capture that. That does not mean in an informal way that council couldn't be notified,
Okay.
which we would sometimes do based on the nature of the process. The reason we selected $1 million is because we're targeting capital projects that are stretching over long periods of time, like the wastewater treatment plant, almost 2 years. So a month or two in terms of reporting something significant is we feel appropriate. And so I think it partly depends on the nature of the projects that are captured by that policy there. But of course, if there was a shortfall of, or I should say, an over budget expenditure, we wouldn't be able to expend it unless we came back and asked for money. So in those cases, if that was to fall between budgetary processes, administration would be required to come back to council and request additional funding before actually making the expenditure. So anything over budget, the requirement for council to approve the expenditure is there already.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? Speaking last, you guys all asked the good questions. And I also would have to agree, like the $1 million one would think we've already budgeted. If we have a shortfall, and you brought up a very good example, that we would be brought up to date as soon as possible, because if you're out by a large sum of money, and I believe the other figures are something we can work on when we're planning it. I believe they're just in for examples, because like the 10,000 for legal, if there's something that was going to cost us more money, would exceed that, one would hope that we would be updated. So if there's no more questions on this, then we will move on to F2.
Just before you,
Oh, go ahead.
Sarah, are you comfortable that you
you-
received the
I
feedback?
still need a little bit of feedback for the exact amounts that you would like those yellow highlighted ones to be. Just before, the $1 million is actually for anything that was over the budget of, it's not an over expenditure or anything like that. And 12A actually states that we will do an update on all capital projects at the third quarter, because a lot of the things happen throughout the year. And the ones that are over $1 million will be updated at each quarterly report. So that was the intent of that capital portion of that.
Okay, well then I'll fire one back at you then what number would you feel comfortable? Like obviously someone put a $1 million, so you know, with our budget, when maybe $500,000 makes more sense.
Whichever the committee would like to.
But I think what Ms. Bittner is suggesting is that if you look at the clause before it, that captures all capital projects will be reported at the conclusion of the third quarter to say where they're at, where their budgets came in, what the progress was. But if there is an the point of this was if there's an ongoing long-term large capital project, that it would be reported at each quarterly meeting, quarterly budget report. So I think I would just encourage you to give that some consideration as those two clauses as a total reporting mechanism for capital, and then perhaps that may answer some of those questions. But regardless, we're certainly happy to adjust that amount on the feedback of council.
So maybe we can go through the numbers then, the feedback. So does 500,000 seem comfortable to everyone in the room?
When we start here,
I would like 500,000.
I would like 250.
500,000.
I say 500.
I say 500.
Agreed.
Okay,
Sure.
then we will go on to the next question, because yes, this is the idea of this. Now the $50,000, does everyone feel comfortable with that? I'll start again.
Yes.
Councillor Sorensen?
Just making sure. That's fine.
Wilkinson? Okay, I'm fine with 50. Okay, we got that one answered. Now the 10,000. We'll start again.
Based on what everyone has said, I think 7,000 or something would be reasonable.
Okay.
I'm fine with 10,000.
7.
Okay, I'll go 7.
I'd probably be more comfortable with 7 too.
Agreed.
7. So does that? And do you have any other questions on this then?
Thank you very much.
There we go. Okay, then seeing none, we will move on to F3-2, draft financial disclosure policy.
Certainly. Back on August 14th committee, we brought forward the sort of second draft of the financial disclosure policy. And this draft was then sent out to the appropriate organisations that it would be affected by. So below in the memo, I've just sort of put down the responses that we got from those organisations. One is the library, the one is the museum or the Historical Society, and the Recycling Society. So the library had one issue that they brought forward, was based on their Libraries Act, about stating that the councillor needs to be on the board and not an alternate if they're voting towards things. So that's something that sort of overtakes what we had put into that policy. So our recommendation for that was that we actually add unless otherwise governed by other provincial or federal regulations to that clause. From the Historical Society, they brought forward something about the audit requirements. We said that complete audit results must be provided to the town by May 31st. Their concern was that they, in the past, have not really had anything brought to them until mid-June from their financial. They don't give an audit; they have a letter from their auditors. Our recommendation for that is, I know that's happened in the past, but as they're going forward and having to require to get a full audit, they could always make that part of their audit requirements when they go out to actually engage an auditor, to say that we need our information by a certain date. So I didn't put any change to the policy based on that particular feedback. In the Recycling Society, they had 6 clauses that they gave some feedback on. So I've listed them all down. I can go through them briefly. One was under the responsibilities of the grant. There was a lot in there where they wanted to change monies to in regard to the municipal portion of their budget. So they were wanting us to actually change those clauses to state that. But my recommendation there is that this is a generic policy, so we've tried to keep any specific group out of any of the clauses, and that all groups should really be treated equally when it comes to this policy. Another one was completing professional audits. They wanted to have completing annual professional audits. The clause that they were mentioning, there's actually another clause that states that audit requirements must be done on an annual basis, so that would be doubling up on that particular, sort of reiterating that it is an annual one. It's actually saying that they have to do it in accordance with the requirements, and the audit requirements state an annual audit, so it was sort of doubling up on that. Another clause we had was submitting any financial documentation requested by the town throughout the year. They would like that to have been removed because they have monthly meetings and they feel that the request for financial documentation should be requested at those monthly meetings. Again, it's a generic document, so we're not really wanting to change to go to a specific society's ruling. The other part was audit requirements. So we had on an annual basis grant recipients will have full financial audit completed by an independent professional service firm, and they have to hold a professional designation, and they requested we change that to on an annual basis we will have a full financial audit completed. Reading that, I was a little confused on why the we would be in there. We don't usually have personalised, are they pronouns? Mm-hmm. Thank you. In policies. And it doesn't really change the intent of the clause that I can see, because they were the ones that would have to get that audit done anyway, so I wasn't really sure why they requested that particular change. So based on all the recommendations above, I present the sort of final draft, and really the only thing that we have put in, as you can see in red, is that about the unless otherwise governed by provincial or federal regulations.
Okay, we'll start. Questions, Councillor Sorensen?
In regards to, through the chair, in regards to section 3 on the unless otherwise governed by provincial or federal regulations, does the administration view, I'm wondering about a scenario when the counselor that's supposed to be sitting on the board cannot attend the meeting, does that board then get to vote on significant material financial matters?
Through the chair.
Go ahead,
to
yeah.
Councillor Sorensen. The way that we were looking at that from the submission that the library gave us, you aren't allowed to vote unless you're on that board, and you can't be an alternate to the board, so you have to be a member and attend as many meetings as required under that act to be able to vote. I'm sure the alternate could go and observe, but they wouldn't actually have a vote in that instance. I would hope that maybe there would be some give and take on meeting dates or things like that if there was something very significant that. Yes, but that's.
Thank you. Yeah, if I may, that was what I was going to add is, I think the suggestion I would make is that if this policy passes, that those organizations would need to be flexible in terms of their dates for, in particular, budget, the major financial decisions, and ensure that their municipal representative would be present when they made those decisions.
Or actually, go ahead, you had another question?
I was just clarifying, that's the response I was hoping to hear. I was worried that you're going to say that because the library board is under provincial regulations, they can vote on significant financial matters.
That is not the intent of
Okay.
including that there.
Great.
I would just comment on, a lot of times it is the council rep's responsibility to be part of that board. So in absence, then I guess if you're not going to be there, the alternate, and in cases like the library board, then if the board is not governed like the library, then it would be responsibility to get a hold of the alt, or the mayor is always an alt. So that falls on the council rep as well to contact the
But
board.
they can't vote on that.
No.
If I may, I think I can clarify
Yeah.
this. This is simply dealing with the fact that we cannot have an alternate vote at the library board. It's not
Exactly.
removing the obligation under the policy to include the town representative in those decisions.
Correct, okay. So I clarify. There was another one, Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I just have a question on this. Then you're suggesting that these boards change their date if they have to, like 10 or 15 people have to change their thing just to accommodate one person.
If I may, I think the suggestion is not about accommodating one person. It's about ensuring that the taxpayers of Edson are represented, as they're the ones who are ultimately providing the funding at those organizational levels. And ultimately, that is what we're suggesting, is to ensure that the town is confident in being involved and connected to those processes, that it may on occasion require them to move a meeting date and or just ensure that there's lots of notice so that people can plan their schedules appropriately. My belief is that this will be rare. Most board members know about their meetings well in advance and are generally attending, and so I think this will have a negligible impact, if any, on any of these organizations.
Councillor, would like to
To the chair,
respond?
can we change it, the alternative council, who would also be representing the taxpayers of Edson?
It does allow.
Can it be changed somehow in a policy? Because
It absolutely, if I may, it absolutely allows for that, unless the organization is bound by legislation like the library. So the
Alright.
problem with the library is we cannot appoint an
Okay.
alternate.
But the
But
other two could.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so if the
Okay.
alternate and or the mayor ultimately showed up, no problem.
Right, just
Yeah.
because sometimes I'm sure financial decisions are needed in
A-
operation.
Absolutely, and we totally recognize that.
Okay, so good, that's.
That flex, we certainly tried to create this to be as flexible as possible
Yeah,
for the
good.
organizations.
Good.
Okay, is there any other? Okay, then I have one comment. We actually pointed out 3 direct boards, but we don't have a dollar figure, so I'm thinking like whatever, unless I can't find it, if there'd be a dollar figure in case, I'll pick some other board.
If I may, Mr. Chair, under
Yes.
scope of application,
Yes,
it states there, receiving any municipal grants in excess of $100,000 per year.
that's what I was looking for, clarification on that. Okay, so this would.
If I may, it also
Yeah.
clarifies that this is generally for ongoing operating concerns.
Right.
If someone was to come and we were to give a one-time grant
It would.
of $100,000 or $150,000, this policy would not be enacted in that case. This is for ongoing operational
Right, and
considerations.
that's where I'm just sort of clarifying, point C3, so I would say any of the other organization, if all of a sudden they expanded, let's say the seniors bus, if they went over the 100,000 threshold, this rule would apply to them
That's
as
correct.
well. So right now, it's only the 3 organizations.
at this point, because the wording as it has now is excess of 100,000 per year for the purpose of providing a routine service to the public.
Okay, and then.
So it's not the one-off ones that come in.
Now, the ones, are we covered the one-off? So let's say we give someone like the bike part a one-time grant. I believe we've got that covered,
We
that
have.
they report back to us. We make sure our money is being spent correctly.
Yeah, so I think we would just deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so they don't need to be covered on this
That's
policy,
correct.
and I'm pleased to say there is the 100,000. I've already touched that. Any other question or concerns? Councillor Bevins?
Yes, on this here, when we have to have, you can't have your alternate on the library through the chair, so with that. Is there any possibility, I read in here, I didn't see anywhere that, is a possibility that you could phone in, have a Skype?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
answer
that, if I may, that would be at the determination of each of the boards, whether or not they would allow for
But
remote
it's-
meeting
Could be
attendance.
a possibility.
If they allowed for that in their internal policies, we would obviously have no problem with that.
So maybe that's something they should check out or whatever, and that way, because there's times where you could go weeks without having a meeting and that, you need to have one, or something like that, so if you could phone and Skype it, then it'd be a lot easier to, get everybody together, sort of.
Well, mind you, what was said here, when we have these meetings, they're long times. Whoever the council rep is, it's no shock that this meeting's coming up. So I guess unless something that you can't change, other than that, then it's your responsibility to attend this meeting. And I agree, the library is mandated differently, but we need the rep to be responsible.
If I may also add, I think we're all aware of emergent circumstances, and
Yes.
the purpose of this policy is not to handcuff an organization from dealing with a significant issue. And I think my expectation is that administratively, and I anticipate that council would be gracious in dealing with any
Right.
organization in that type of circumstance. This is more of the general nature of their financial processes and reporting, and so it's not intended to make it difficult for them to deal with emergent issues.
Councillor Byers.
Through the chair, just a comment on the library, since I sit on that board. I will go back to them about the policy to see whether or not Skyping or telephoning in would be made available, and if that could be allowed as a voting method if someone, myself or someone else in the future wouldn't be able to attend. As well, their current practice is that they would get an agenda on the Friday through email, and then the Wednesday evening would be the meeting. So if there was something in advance known that someone couldn't attend, then there would be still time to have those conversations through email to express any concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, did you get all your questions answered this time?
Yes, I think.
Okay, and no one has any more concerns, so we will move on to, thank you, Sarah. We will move on to F4, Community Services, Draft Youth Council Policy. Who's speaking to that?
Tanya's.
Tanya.
Jim.
Right. Everyone knows Tanya Byer here? Okay, carry on.
Through the chair, did everyone have a chance to look at the policy?
Yes.
Okay. So just a little background on it. The mayor had asked for something resembling Whitecourt's model, which is something I guess that he felt would work for Edson. So I did do some research and spoke to other municipalities, and Whitecourt's really did seem to have I think a really good model that would work for Edson as well. And so this is, they gave us free rein to borrow, steal, whatever we wanted from there. So there is a few tweaks that are, more specific to Edson, such as the activities they would be involved in. But obviously, this is just our, one draft. And it's, if you guys have suggestions and you want to completely redo the way that this council might look, by all means, let's discuss.
Anyone has a question, concern? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I'd just like to compliment you on getting this started and going. It's very important.
Councillor Byers.
Through the chair to Ms. Byers. So I have in here, in there it says something week in October of the year. Since that's already passed, will it be starting this season or this 2018, I guess?
I think that's another decision that has to be made, because if we want to condense it and maybe start in January and have a condensed version of it, or maybe allow the first term to go from January and then also another year. I agree. I think that waiting till next October is not the best idea. I think we could get it up and running by January.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Bevins.
Good, Chair Tanya. I like what they're doing. We're starting this finally and that. I hope the kids come out and participate, or we get people, because I was at the Human Book in the Pine Grove School there. And this did come up from just about every child that was sitting on my table we were talking about that. And I think I went through about 35, 40 kids. And I asked them about if they would be willing to participate on this or whatever. And one of them, maybe 40, said yeah. The other didn't care. And I thought, oh, because it was brought up, and I know the mayor was sitting at another table across and that, and he was also quizzed about it too. So between the two, it was kind of tag teamed in that. So I hope that we do get, some participation from our students in that.
Through the chair, I think it is a really important initiative. With the social needs assessment that was done in 2014, it really spoke to needs of youth and not being met. And our community development team has been talking a lot and brainstorming, and youth interagency, and just working with all the different agencies in town to say, what do the youth need? But the bottom line is we don't have the youth voice, really formally telling us what it is that they need. And so I think that this is a really important step that we need to take to get their voice, and they have a formal way to have it heard.
If I may add, it's occasionally the political science nerd in me takes over, and I think that one of the things that we are observing in society is the general disengagement with political processes. And there's some, I won't go into details here, but there's some really, really significant research that suggests that if youth get involved in political processes, they are much more likely to be lifelong voters. In fact, the evidence is that if they vote in their first election after they turn 18, it's about 75% chance that they will be a lifelong voter, compared to only 20% if they miss that first vote. So I think this is just a significant opportunity to hopefully produce, wherever they end up living, Edson or otherwise, some more engaged, more contributory members of society, and a wonderful initiative.
Okay, I think Councillor Bevins, then Byers, Curry, Thompson.
Through the chair, Danny. I know in the past, and I sat on the community service board for close to 9 years in that, and we did have a youth rep come to us and report. And it lasted probably half a dozen times, then they didn't show up again in that. So we tried again, we tried 3 different times, and it was always the same way, they just didn't show up. Didn't like, where it was going or whatever in that, and they just kind of dropped it from the community service board and that. So I'm hoping this time it'll be different. I got my fingers crossed. I think it's a good policy we're putting in effect. I'd love to see the kids come out. I got a lot of feedback from them, what they would like to see, from a teen drop-in night to they're really excited about the new multiplex facility we're building and stuff like that, the whole works like that. So, and I know I got some notes on, I know the mayor has some notes on it too and that, so they did have a lot of feedback on that, for sure.
Councillor or did you want to respond to that?
I did, just through the chair. You probably noticed that there is a budgetary component to this.
Yes.
And, I'm hoping that will be the carrot that will keep them engaged, keep them involved. And also, I think too, maybe if there was only one sitting on your board, being that lonely youth with a group of adults may not have been as attractive as being with a group of peers. So, I think there's a few different components to this, and Whitecourt seems to be having really good success with it.
For sure you do.
Yeah.
I think, if I may, any policy, program, procedure is only as good as both those administering and the engagement of the youth, and if we generate high levels on both ends, we'll have a really, really functional program. I think included in that budgetary concern is we're going to feed them at these meetings, so at minimum they come get a pizza or something like that. That might be enough to generate that, but it does take investment. I think that's important, is if they show up for the first meeting and they don't feel like it's meaningful, and they don't feel like the town council's actually interested in what they have to say, they're pretty unlikely to keep showing up. But if they see that their input is being considered and impacting council's processes and decisions, I would suggest that you would be likely to see a pretty high level of engagement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Byers.
Through the chair to Ms. Byers. So I forgot to mention that I realized that this is going forward. But I was wondering, how are we picking the kids, or the youth, I should say? They're going to be in it. Is there a way that we're advertising or saying that this is going to be coming about to attract people? And then the second question is, How are we deciding what will be discussed at the meetings?
So I think to answer your first question through the chair,
Okay.
we, our community development team, actually Scott Lamb is going to be part of the committee. And we would definitely be marketing this out to all of the schools. And part of this document talks about wanting representation from each of the schools because we really do want a diverse group. We don't want, we want a really good cross-section. And so we would be, actively going to the schools, also encouraging teachers and administration to be promoting it and hopefully even maybe referring. They don't need a referral, but they do need references for youth that are involved. So that's, and obviously through social media with youth is a way that we would put it out there. And also marketing it as a really good leadership opportunity. It's great for a resume. You look at the financial even possibilities of it. If they, a grade 9 student could be on it for 4 years and have a pretty good sum of money to start school with.
Absolutely.
So I guess, does that answer your first question?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I also have some other documents here that, if the council moves forward, there's, terms of reference, there's leadership programs that other places have established already. And I really just think the group and whoever's involved in the leadership of the group and the students have to decide, vision and mission, committee structure, what are the leadership opportunities? Are they going to have a chair, a vice, a secretary? Obviously our community development staff would be there to take official minutes to make sure everything's captured and the meetings are scheduled and the room is booked and those sort of things. But at the same time, we can give some of those leadership opportunities to the youth if the group so chooses. Are they going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, voting structure, code of conduct, those sort of things? But I believe that once the committee comes together, that's something they need to be involved in. I think the youth have to decide what they want that to look like, with the leadership and guidance, of course, of the adults.
I think if I may add, in terms of the topics that are discussed there, I think there's a push and pull that can go on here. Youth can present things that they think they're interested in or want to have a conversation with town council about, and town council can introduce things that they're interested in a youth perspective, and I think it would be valuable. I think naturally most of them will focus on those areas that the youth are most engaged with, recreation and cultural and activity based and space and those types of things, but I also think it wouldn't be bad for them to see and touch and learn a little bit about just the functionality of a municipality and the budgetary and financial constraints and pressures that come along with that. And so I think there's a lot of room for those pieces to be discussed and for the youth to see and feel and understand a little bit better how the big picture kind of fits together.
Okay, next question. Okay, Councillor Curry and then Sorensen and then you have one as well. No? Okay.
Okay,
This
thank
way.
you. Through the chair, I have a few comments surprising here on you. I love this. We know I love this. Couple statements that I just want to make. One, going back to the application process. I like the application process. I think for sure when we do this, that needs to be online. Definitely not necessary that we have to fill out a form and bring it back in. We'll join their age group. With that though, I would like to see in the policy a section that is application approval. So I just think that we need to have a very clear, especially for them, if I get this application, I want to know, so what if 50 of us apply? Because I'm optimistic. I work with a lot of these leaders and I think we're going to have lots of applications. And so I just think it's really important that in that policy, we have a clear defined how we're approving these applications. So if that's percentage based on schools, percentage based on grade levels, but I think that needs to be in the policy for the scenario that we have lots, and so that they know that, because that might be a thing where a couple friends say, you know what, this year I'm going to let you apply. Also, I didn't see in here, did I miss it, just how long somebody can sit on the council? Like, is the council, do they need to do new applications yearly? Is that like an organizational meeting? Okay. Can we just make sure that that's somewhere, and that might go in that same thing, applications and such, just so that it's really clear on how long you're sitting there for. My other one was under the reports are made to council as follows. I like to build leaders. And so I see in there that there is no reporting from the youth members. So I think that, and not necessarily that it has to be on a monthly basis, but maybe on a quarterly basis, just knowing their time. But I would really like to see under that to have an area that says a youth council member will report to council on a quarterly, whatever kind of people think for that, timelines. And then under the budget implications, also trying to build leaders in, the democratic system. I would like to, maybe this is just me, and I don't even know, are under 18 allowed to attend AUMA? These questions are through the chair.
Yep.
I don't know.
I would just, I see that we have in there for a leadership, but that this is a youth council for municipalities. That's the point of it, and we are trying to grow leaders. So I would like it to be more specific that budget line is for some kind of there's a ton of leadership out there, but I want this to be more specific to like government leadership. So to me, something like AUMA really does, like they see a whole different level of what goes on, but some kind of government type leadership. So maybe more specific, and maybe that's too specific, and maybe that can come down. But I just think that those are the type of things that really get the political science people when they see those things and they interact with the ministers and they get to actually interact in a more political sense. That's what kind of gets that buy-in. I think I'm done. Thank you. I think it looks great.
Through the chair, to respond to that, Councillor Curry, it does state in there that every year they have to apply again. And so they'll sit for the 1 year and then, but we don't have a limit though. So if you guys feel like, maybe a 3-year limit is important, or is it indefinite?
I think, if I may, I think the challenge with limits is if, I generally feel as Councillor Curry feels that we'll have plenty. If you don't, and there's only so many kids applying, then you may eliminate those that are actually engaged and are actually participating. And so I think I would recommend that we begin as is, and if we run into a situation where we feel like that becomes an issue, we can deal with it. I think the policy is permissive in the selection process, so that if there is 50 kids, I think it's unlikely that we would just continue to select the same kids over and over again, rather than spreading around the opportunity for more to participate. But
through the chair, one other thing that I think we have to address, it's done a little bit different in different municipalities. Some people just take the application and read it and make decisions. But some go as far as actually having the youth come in front of council, maybe do a little presentation, a little interview. I like the idea of them coming in front of council and maybe explaining why they want to be a part of it. It could be a little bit of a daunting experience for them, but I think also a good one. So I'm not sure what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, to the chair, I guess to the chair here. The previous council, we were at AUMA. There was a youth representation there at one time, one of our courses in that.
Yes.
Because we did sit on something where the youth came in and that to the previous council and that. I can't remember what it was, but they did have something there where the youth did, come in and give us a presentation and stuff. So I think, if we would ask, we could probably find out, or if we could have them come. I think there'd be a lot of municipalities probably would sign up for it.
If I may, I will certainly review whether or not that's an opportunity. If I may just add to Ms. Byers' question of council in terms of the actual process, I would just add my thought to that is I'm cautious to make the process too much, because I think we're then changing the breadth of demographic who will be attracted to participate. And I think the purpose of this is to represent as many or all youth if possible, and the more formal and the more that's required in terms of the application process, I think there will be less general applicants. Not that that wouldn't be a tremendous experience for those that were interested. I'm just not sure that's the larger focus of the program or the policy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, excellent policy. I feel extremely fortunate to be able to sit on it for the first go around. Getting back to Councillor Curry's comment, I do agree. I think we do need a little bit of transparency here on acceptance of the initial applicants. I think the worst case that could happen is they go away and feel that we've manipulated the acceptance of certain applications to influence a certain demographic. That would be the worst case scenario. So we have to be transparent ahead of time. And maybe they come up with the policy for the second year on how applicants get approved. Maybe we can give them a little autonomy there. But just to comment again, I feel very fortunate to sit on this group, and I look forward to it.
Okay, Councillor. I think okay. We'll go in alphabetical order. So B, then C. We'll solve this.
Through the chair to Ms. Byers. So on the policy, it says that there's 14 members and the mayor, and then 1 town council representative. And we just in our organizational meeting have a mayor and 2 council.
I can answer that. Yeah, this was prepared prior to the organizational meeting, so that can easily be adjusted to accommodate as per the organizational meeting. But yes.
All right. Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
I was going to comment on that. I also noticed that. That other thing. And then just to comment too, I would second what Mr. Derricott had said about as nice as it would be to have them come and present. I think that would eliminate a lot of people with the confidence at the beginning. But I do, and I don't know, and maybe it's not appropriate, but in this policy we have the town council representative role. But I question, and I don't know if you saw this, if there was any roles of town council as a whole. Because what I would see more is I do think it would be our responsibility, not just the representatives, but the council as a whole. Once, you know, as kind of a first meet, they've met, but whether it's they come to council and we meet them all, if they're the youth council, I think we should all have met them and had an informal meet and greet with them. To ensure that we're calling them the youth council, then we as a council should all have had an informal meet and greet. So whether that's somewhere where we have council's role too, you know, or that goes in there. But I think instead of having them do that introducing, and then maybe there are times, have they ever had things where they get to sit in on the council meeting as a special guest? Did you see that along the way ever?
Through the chair, there is part in the policy where they are expected to each sit on in at least one meeting.
Okay.
And then they go back to their council and they do a report on that. So it just, I guess, encourages them to come and be part of it.
And I certainly think we could acknowledge them when they're here and that type of thing. I would suggest in reference to your previous comment, I think those things can be done just on a more informal basis. I'm not sure we need to try and capture all of those types of interactions in the policy. I don't disagree with you that would be a good process, but I'm not sure it would strengthen the policy to have it in there.
Okay. And if I may,
yes, go ahead.
through the chair, just one more thing to add. Morrisville said that through the years, their youth felt that being called the youth council was a little too formal. They didn't like it, they dropped it, and they've become the youth leadership program. So just want to ask what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, does anyone want to answer that, or do you have a question?
Through the chair to Ms. Byers.
Okay.
I think right now if we called it youth council and then asked them what they would prefer it to be called, and I certainly would be interested in hearing their thoughts if that was too formal for their liking.
Yeah, if I may, I'll add my perspective on this. I think it depends what you expect to get out of this group. And my opinion is the policy is not designing a youth leadership program, it's designing a youth council. And they should be referred to that way. That's my opinion. I don't disagree with Councillor Byers' suggestion. If they feel that a name change is in order, I think that's fine, as long as it's in line with what the policy or the program is intended to do. And ultimately, the way this policy is designed is to engage youth in the decision making in our community. And so I think as long as it lines up with that, then it's fine.
I'll just go around so we get your question answered. What do you, okay, what we think of as the word council, agree or disagree? I'll start with everyone's come around,
Yeah.
then we'll answer your question.
Yeah, I already said that I agree
Okay,
with it. for
Councillor
the most
Sorensen.
I like the idea of youth council.
Well consent.
I do too, and again, have their input as we should on everything.
I prefer council. I like the idea of overshadowing.
I agree with keeping it as youth council and then letting them have some autonomy once it's established.
Okay, that answers that one. And then I believe, did you have another question, Councillor Sorensen?
Yes, I don't know if it needs to be right in the policy, but I hope that we approach the youth council for feedback on all public consultations. They may not have a particular opinion on something, but if we are doing open houses and public surveys, we might as well ask them for a response.
Councillor Curry.
And I knew I was missing one, and it was just kind of as you were talking. I actually would like a specific, I might be the only one, under the youth council role, where we have like to engage the youth, our community and the represent and stuff. I would actually like a specific thing on to give input on the budget, like to give feedback on, because that is a part of it, is trying to get them to understand what is an accountability and understand where the funds are going. So I would like that to be a part of, to give, youth input, but specific, like this is very broad, but I would like them to specifically be that one of their roles is to give input on our yearly annual budget.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I'd like that to be reviewing the budget. I think it's very difficult to say input on the budget because really they're not a taxpayer yet to pay that out. And through the chair to Tanya, when do you think this will start? Because I've been stepping in the high school and there's just tons of kids there that would be perfect on this. Start recruiting.
Well, through the chair, I think if, we can kind of get this finalized and it's just a few little changes and.
Okay, so I can start bugging already because I really hope it's not all just the smartest kids in the school. I really hope it's a great cross section because there's wonderful kids on each end in the middle.
Well, I believe that we would get a lot better feedback and information if we do have a cross section.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
certainly our intention would be to, seek out.
Yeah, I've done my mind already.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that's a really important point, is we've seen this in this community, and I think others, it's a very common thing where advisory groups can get overtaken by a particular interest group, whether it's a specific activity or a specific project, and then they start to kind of change their focus. And so I think making sure we have as broad a mandate as possible and inclusion from as many of those groups as we can is really good. I think it's safe to say that this is coming, and so to start talking about it is probably fine. The final form will obviously be decided by council here in the near future. Also, there's some budget requests that will need to be discussed by council in the upcoming deliberations as well.
And also through the chair, one consideration is that if we do start it in January, then we have to think about, are they still going to receive bursary for, or do we cut that bursary in half? Do we have budgets for it?
Maybe it's just a good incentive for the first guys.
It's going to be extra work the first.
It's extra work.
Yeah.
Okay, my only question, who is the final deciders on this? Because we got all input, so who is going to decide who is going to be on this first group?
I think that's one thing that we will have to go back and just clarify the mechanism whereby this will be decided. My initial thought would be that the town council representatives with Tanya and whoever she assigns, they would form the selection committee and they would review the applications and go from there. But that's just my very initial thought on it. We'd have to talk about that. But I do think it is really important that it's clear how those decisions are made. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that should be done by the youth, because that's where I think a lot of those, Jenny picked Jill instead of Sue, and now even if it's not happening, I worry about the perception of that. But I do think we will certainly, when we bring this back, have some form of selection articulated in the policy.
And that's part I would agree with too. Like, we don't want to put it on the youth who they're choosing. So, and I believe to get a good cross section, because who knows, we might get 100 applicants or might get 15 out of 12. So the more the better, but on the end of the day, in order to get that cross section, we can't put in parameters, but it has to be, we're going to factor in age, hopefully important. So because it goes from 13 to 18. So we want to make sure we have people representing the 13-year-olds as well as the 18s, but not skipping in the middle. As far as the other parts, we'll just have to figure that out according to the applications. So you could have parameters in there that, maybe your grades have to be up or something that the school puts into play. So we need to put something.
Through the chair, I would hate to put grades in there because you could actually be part of this and not be involved in school.
Oh, okay, right,
Yeah.
so then, but I was reading where it said you had to attend or attended here, is that correct?
Or live in Edson.
Or so then, so
Yeah.
we're restricting it to that age, because you could be homeschooled or,
That's right.
and then you wouldn't be there. So I shouldn't say, you know, put in grades, but a lot of times an incentive, or I guess you can't. If you skip out of school, you're not allowed, but if you're homeschooling, it is. So it's gonna be interesting the first time
No,
go
if you're
around.
an Edson resident, you would be allowed to be on council.
Okay.
So I know that they all should be enrolled in school, but if they aren't.
But some at 17 could be graduated and want to be part of it. So it's gonna be tough. So
Yeah.
good luck choosing that first 12.
Yeah, well, and also Whitecourt said that they actually struggled to get a full 12.
Oh, did
So I mean, I
I-
hope that we got this good problem, that we have so many to choose from. But you never know.
Perfect. Do you
Yeah,
have a
this,
comment?
if I may note, just that I think that will be our biggest problem, and so keeping it broad, keeping it easy to apply. We will work closely with, schools and other agencies who know the kids to try and get as good a feel as we can for who's applying, so that we're building the best possible dynamic to. Like I said, for me, reminding ourselves of the objective is really, really important. If the objective is to have a youth voice in our community, then we want to have a diverse, wide-ranging group from all different kinds of backgrounds and activities and interests and age groups. And so if we go with that mandate, I think it'll be pretty easy to determine the right fits for the committee.
Okay, do you have all your questions answered? Something like that? I mean, good luck with it. I honestly believe it is something good. It's gonna be challenging that first go round. I'm glad that we got stuff from Whitecourt, but I look forward to it. It's gonna be interesting and it should be exciting to happen. So thank you very much.
Tanya, you're comfortable with the feedback there?
Yes.
Thank you so much. That was
You're
an
good.
excellent discussion.
Okay, we're gonna move on to F5. And with that said, I have to call on Councillor Curry, and if you can come and get me when we do the rest of it.
That sounds good. So on the AC.
None of you like lagoon fees.
Is it Derek? What happened here, guys?
Oh,
It
yeah.
smelled like a
You thought it was a skunk in there.
lagoon.
Sarah came back from me, I guess, for support.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just coming back from the feedback received at the last committee of the whole meeting. So administration is basically going to recommend to council for a motion at the next committee meeting, or sorry, at the next council meeting, to have a $20 fee for monthly residents that are on currently paying a fee for the wastewater treatment plant, which basically will cover all the people that are on septic field or septic tank. And then we'll also just leave that $100 fee that's currently in there right now for all other residents, so town commercial, and then county residents and county commercial.
Okay. Open it up. Councilor Bevin.
Through the chair, down here. Why wouldn't we just charge the $14.25 to all residents that are on it right now, even 40 that aren't on it? Why would we want to go to $20?
Through the chair to Councillor Bevan, a little bit of some cost recovery. It'll also be fair to all the residents that are technically paying for that wastewater treatment fee, plus they're also paying a fee to discharge into the sewer monthly. They pay a monthly fee, so if you look at the majority of them are going about 3 tons, 6.8 cubes. It's pretty much a fair figure, and that also gives us a little bit of cost recovery. We are going to be looking at some more likely costs coming up in the future. Some of the requirements probably will be through Alberta or AEP after our plant is up and running to come up with some type of septic receiving plan, which will probably require some upgrades to our lagoon where we're getting it and where we're receiving it from currently. So that'll just help offset some of those costs and put some of the costs back onto the users instead of onto everybody.
If I may add to that, very, very simply, the $14.25 is only capturing the capital replacement cost of the treatment facility. The remaining fee, the $5.75, would be to cover the operational costs associated with manning those dumps and which we currently do. So there's an operational component and a capital component.
Councilor Short.
I'm in favor of this policy, I guess it is. But I would like to if possible, keep on their monthly bill the two 1425 and the 575 separate.
They would be, they would be shown separately on their bills, yep.
Yeah, I'm in full support.
Councillor Rai?
Through the chair to Darren. Although I know we talked at our previous committee meeting that it wasn't, complete cost recovery, and I still don't completely favor that, but I understand that it's really hard to be fair to residents when they don't actually have a sewer connected to their house to have that be completely fair. So I do support this proposal.
Through the chair. Sorry, I missed the last council meeting, so I want to get this really straight. The people who are on their own sewage thing, they'll pay $20 a month, and they will not pay to get their things pumped out and hauled, or who's going to pay for that?
No, so they will still have to pay for the transportation. What they won't pay is the $100 at yes.
So they're going to pay what they used to pay before, plus they're going to have this at $20. Because they never had the $20 before, right?
Yeah, the $20 being new, but we're removing the $100 that was causing them some concerns.
Charging them $20 more than what they paid, say, last year.
Right, we are, but we think it's just the requisite cost for them using the facility.
Okay,
So just as
just asked if we're just to get that straight.
That's
okay,
right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I am also in favor of this. I think it's as close to fair as you can be to ensure, I understand that they don't have sewage. That was also part of where they chose to buy property, and that's was a known fact. And I also think it's not fair that other users are paying for capital costs and capital upkeep, and they're not. So I think this is a great way to evenly do it. My question would be, does this now, so say I was one of those users and it used to be $100, now could they, if they wanted to, dump more? Or not, or no? That would cost more anyways, trucking.
Yeah, so there would be, other than the costs of hauling increasing based on volume, there would be no increased fee from the town based on volume. This would be, we would consider their utility rate to cover the cost of using the town facilities. But, yeah.
That's it. Any other, do you have any
Derek, do you have any other questions? Or
you.
so I think based on the feedback, we'll bring this forward. I think we're planning on a adjustment of the fees and rates bylaws. There's a few others that need to be adjusted, and so when we do that, we'll be bringing this forward as part of that conversation. So,
Okay.
good. Just need
Thank
to
you.
grab Councillor Chenard.
Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Thanks, Darren.
Take turn.
Okay, so detective services, so no sundry items. Questions from the media and the audience front questions pertaining to the committee poll today. Do we have any questions from the audience or the media? No? Okay, and we have no in camera. So the most important thing we have to do is call for adjournment. I like that spot. Councillor Byers. All in favor? Those opposed? Thanks.